I found a quick, easy, simple, no-till method of growing cover crops that once you get started, it requires little to no tillage whatsoever. In fact, usually a bush hog and a spreader is all you need. And what's most important is in an area like mine here in Mississippi, in the southern part of the United States, it is often incredibly dry during the fall. That's when we're trying to get our good fall planted cover crops in. Deer hunters are trying to plant their crops. And the thing is especially during the dry time, it starts not in July or August, but it starts in the spring. And the method that I'm talking about starts with a field like this. Now, this field was disked when it was planted, but after this field is grazed, I should be able to plant it with minimum to no tillage whatsoever. I can get our fall cover crops planted and it should turn out beautifully. Let me take you another part of the farm where I just planted some fall cover crops and show you how this annual cycle of cover crops can help you save soil moisture, especially during drought conditions. But I have found it to be phenomenally successful with minimal investment of time, energy, and especially equipment. Now I'm over here in an area where we've been grazing our cattle, especially those that we're finishing out. And in this field, it's predominantly sorghum Sudan grass. There's been some red clover in here, along with dock and chicory and a little bit of plantain. And of course, there's crabgrass in this pasture too. After I grazed the cows on it last week, I came in here and broadcast the seed after I'd grazed it, but before I'd bush hogged it. Then I came through here with the bush hog, mowed it. I did irrigate on top of it after I broadcast it. And then over the last 36 hours, we've gotten right at an inch's worth of rain. And let me show you what the seed is doing here. You can see where the sorghum Sudan grass is regrowing where I've bush hogged it. You can see these are some spring peas that I'm trying. I'm really interested to see how they perform. First time growing them from green cover seed. This is a daikon radish right here. There's chicory that was already growing. That, I believe, is mung bean. Now, I could have come through and disked this, but first, the sorghum Sudan grass is still growing, and I want to get the value out of the sorghum Sudan grass. Sorghum Sudan grass is still growing, and I want to get the value out of the sorghum Sudan grass. After it's frost killed, these daikon radishes and the peas will be looking really phenomenal and offer a lot of green forage for those cattle to perform better on. But what I've found is that after I graze and then bush hog the sorghum Sudan grass, the stalks are mostly what's on the ground now. And what I found is it offers just enough of a mulch that it serves that function of covering up the seed that we do when we're disking. Now, we do need better soil for this to work out very well. If you just go on a hard clay soil and take your pasture and broadcast the seed and then bush hog it, I found that it does not work very well. I'll show you this on another part of this field in a minute. And for us, soil moisture in the fall is the most important thing about how well our crops perform during this time of the year. Now, I can irrigate from the pond over here, but what I found is if I seed over into this sorghum Sudan grass and then bush hog it, that mulch saves a lot more soil moisture than if I had disked it, planted it, covered the seed up, and then irrigated it or let it rain. Now, this is just my own observation and my own experience, but it seems to me that an inch's worth of rain that actually settles on the ground when there's a mulch is far more effective than 2 inches of irrigation or rain if the soil is disked, because it holds that soil moisture and it is so much more effective. Now, we can also do this in the spring with our spring cover crops. If we have a really good stand of something like wheat or oats, cereal rye that we then graze. We can seed sorghum Sudan grass into it. I've got a field over there that I did that with, and it worked really well in the second field that I grazed, but it didn't work too well in the first field I grazed. I'm still perfecting that system. But take a look at all the crops that are growing. The mung beans, the peas right there, more peas, daikon radish. As I move out of the area where I had the sorghum Sudan grass right there and on into this area where we had a little bit of sorghum Sudan grass and crabgrass, you still see some of it seeded right there. But the further we move away from those good stands of sorghum Sudan grass, the less germination that we get. But out here, the soil is not as good. The crops aren't germinating quite as well. If you're in an environment like mine and you want to get a good stand of fall cover crops, or even crops for wildlife or whatever else in the fall, you can plant on whatever's just growing there naturally. But if you'll start in the spring by planting some sorghum Sudan grass, I'd try some buckwheat, maybe some soybeans or cowpeas or mung beans, something to help with some nitrogen. You don't have to do that, but if you start with some sorghum Sudan grass, it'll help improve the soil. It'll help loosen up the soil just enough that when you plant your fall crops, they'll perform better. And then you'll have enough mulch material from the sorghum Sudan grass as you mow it to help cover up that seed, to help preserve soil moisture, and to give some good seed to soil contact. I found it to be critical to go on and broadcast the seed before you mow, and here's why. If you broadcast the seed and it doesn't settle down to the ground completely, it appears that the vibration of the bush hog, as it spins, as it rotates, cuts the grass, it drops the seed further to the ground and then lays that material on top of it. Now, it works really well with a flail mower, even better with a flail mower, but a bush hog will work if you need it to. I've even done this with a zero-turn lawnmower, though it's harder to get even coverage across the ground with one of those. Let's head on to the field over here where we've got our spring planted crops like this, and I'll show you what worked and what did not work. And while we're on our way over there, let's see how well this germination is where we don't have sorghum Sudan grass growing. We've got some peas germinating right there. Some radishes. They're not quite as successful as where the sorghum Sudan grass is, but I will say it looks a lot better than I had anticipated. Now this field I planted yesterday in the middle of the rain in the same way that I planted this last field. The cows grazed it, and I broadcast the seed and then bush hogged. We'll see how well it germinates. Over here I had some cereal rye that I was grazing the cows on. It had already gone to seed, and so the cows were eating primarily the clover. Right through here I had a line where I grazed that side and then this side. For whatever reason, when I seeded my sorghum Sudan grass over here, I got some coming up, but over here it was mediocre germination. It is some trial and error. That's the primary point I'm trying to communicate. There's trial and error, especially doing this in the spring. But you can get good results with the right crops. We'll come back to that in a moment. Now over here we had a lot more sorghum Sudan grass. You can see the stalks where they were grazed harder, and there was probably 3 times the sorghum Sudan grass over here. I get much less predictable results in the spring. I'm still working that system out, but you can do it, and you can do it fairly well. Over here I've got the cows on an area, and you can see where they've just about annihilated this sorghum Sudan grass. They've been here a little bit too long, But you can tell that it's basically just the stalks of the sorghum Sudan grass that's left when I bush hog it. Now, out here in dry weather, when we're planting our fall cover crops, a no-till drill is not going to do a bit of good most years, especially if we're trying to plant in August or September. If we do get rain, it's half an inch or an inch at a time, just like it was yesterday, and then we won't get much rain for a while. When we get those rains, the soil is so dry that even at 2 or 3 inches below the soil surface, there's no moisture for a drill if you're trying to plant larger seeded crops. Broadcasting this way is just so much easier. Because I want the sorghum Sudan grass to grow anyway, I'm going to bush hog it anyway. So I can spend a few minutes and a few dollars broadcasting the seed beforehand, and it helps. Let me break down 2 or 3 different tips for success. First and foremost, the seed that you're planting is going to determine its success. For example, daikon radish works beautifully being broadcast planted this way. It is so easy to germinate. The seed's a little bit more expensive per pound than something like a dwarf Essex rape or other brassicas, but I have found it to work beautifully this way. On the warm season crops that I've found that work beautifully planted this way, buckwheat is incredibly easy to plant this way. I mean, it just needs a little bit of cover and soil moisture for it to start growing. My suspicion and my general rule, the boars are fighting. My suspicion and general rule with this is that the seeds that germinate the fastest are the ones that have an easier time germinating this way. Buckwheat germinates quickly, daikon radish germinates quickly. This spring forage pea that I got from Green Cover Seed, it's doing much better than I'd anticipated. Oyster and winter peas I'll have some success with. Soybeans, cowpeas, and now it looks like mung beans seem to do pretty well growing this way as well. But it also matters not just what seed you're planting into, but what crop is currently growing that you're seeding into. And of those, I found that sorghum Sudan grass is one of the best because it offers so much coverage, even that the cows won't graze. It just works beautifully. Buckwheat is another crop that is easy to grow into. You can knock the forage down. There's enough material that you can normally mow buckwheat down. It dries real quickly and does pretty well. If you have a grass that's just super wet, I think it heats up or compacts on the seeds and doesn't allow them to germinate. For example, if you're trying this in a field that has a lot of just really green, nutritious grass, let's say cereal rye when it's green and growing in its vegetative state, I'm not sure that it's going to work out real well. That's why the stuff that I planted over here I think works so well this year, because the cereal rye had already gone to seed when I put the cows in there. If you've had some success with this, let me know in the video comments or shoot me an email, rob@dowdlefamilyfarms.com. I would really love to know what kind of success you've had. Let's go to the field behind the house now. And let's walk through the plan of how I think we can get that field to function well based on how things have played out right here and how we actually had to start. These pastures are the ones we just bought a few months ago. And this sorghum Sudan grass here has gone to seed. I'd really like to put pigs on it because there is a lot of buckwheat seed in it. But all that to say, I can bring cows in here to graze it. The buckwheat will regrow. After we graze the animals, we can reseed it depending on the time of the year. If it's next week, that'll be one reason. But if it's another month or two before we graze it, if we leave this for standing forage, we may wait and plant some hairy vetch and cereal rye. Man, those make a phenomenal combination that is out of this world. We can graze them early in the spring and then plant our warm season cover crops and get a lot of benefit that way. We should not have to do any tillage, or if we do, it'll be very minimal. What I found is in the spring, typically when it's wetter and getting seeds like sorghum Sudan grass and good germination rates on that, we don't always have quite as much success in the spring planting this way as we do in the fall, but I've still got some more stuff to try on that front. Now you may have to increase your seeding rates of daikon radish, so rather than planting at about 8 or 10 pounds to the acre, you may have to increase your planting rate to about 15 or 20 pounds to the acre, almost doubling it. And the reason is you may not have as much of it germinating. But for daikon radish, for example, doubling that seeding rate is going to cost me about $40 rather than $20. So it's going to cost me an extra $20 per acre. But here's the thing. If I were to run out there and disc, it would cost me far more than an extra $30, $40, $50 an acre in time and money and everything else planting those crops. All that to say, if you want excellent fall planted cover crops in dry weather, the thing that I found is most important is take something like sorghum sudan grass planted in the spring or the summer, mow it a couple times, it'll help improve the soil, and then plant your fall crops into it just before a rain, bush broadcast your seed, bush hog it, and you should be good to go. I found that it's an extremely effective way for me. Anyway, y'all take care. I'm gonna go get busy. Have a great day, get planted. Let me know how this stuff works for you, and we will catch you at another time.